I was the world's highest paid janitor. I wouldn't recommend this job. What do you picture when someone says secret government facility? You probably imagine soldiers guarding top secret projects, or masked scientists dissecting aliens. I don't blame you, that's what movies and games have told you to think about. But tell me this, how many scientists or soldiers, after a day of hard work, will pick up a mop and bucket and go clean up the toilets and the corridors? I'd wager there aren't many. That's where I come in, the world's highest paid janitor. My name is Robert, Robb for short. I spent 20 years of my life working at a regular army base, before some higher up noticed I could keep my mouth shut, and got me transferred to wherever the hell all this happened. Before I was given the job, I signed enough non-disclosure agreements to bury myself under. Even then, they transported me to wherever the hell I was to work in a windowless truck, to make sure I could never find the damn place. To hell with all the secrecy. My employers fucked up big time, and I almost paid the price for their failure. People have to know what happened. So here goes. It was supposed to be a quiet day. I was doing my work as usual, mopping floors in a computer room on one of the upper levels of the facility. The compound extends deep below the ground, and the lower you go, the more protocol and secrecy there is. In the outer levels, however, life is almost normal. We're even allowed to fraternize a bit, so I was casually chatting with one of the computer scientists, a young man in his early 30s I knew as Peter. I was asking about how he ended up working here. At university, they called me a programming prodigy. Peter told me. It got into my head, and I started doing some shady stuff with those skills. Eventually I got busted, and the powers that be gave me a choice. Either I would work for them, or I would go to a maximum security prison. He smiled. You can probably guess which one I chose. Ever regret that choice? I grinned. Oh, all the time. He laughed. After all, this place is essentially a prison, except I have to work all day. We both laughed. What are you working on, anyway? I asked. I knew I wouldn't get a meaningful answer. Firstly, because it was strictly forbidden for anyone to talk about their work. Secondly, because no one at this level actually knew what they were working on. No one was allowed to see the big picture, they just received tasks, finished them, and sent the finished work down to the lower levels. Peter smirked. Hell if I know, Rob. I just program stuff and send it down into the pit. Right now, I'm finishing up a program to simulate radiation spread, but it would be a whole lot easier if I knew what the hell its purpose even is. We both laughed. Humor was the best way to cope with the reality of our work here. What about you? Peter asked. Any top secret projects that you're working? Without warning, the lights in the room suddenly flickered, and went dark for a second, before buzzing back to life. I looked around in confusion. In the years I'd been working here, the power had never failed, not once. Programmers were shouting in frustration, hitting their desks and cursing about all the work they'd lost. Peter looked at me, a worried expression on his face. What just happened, Rob? He asked. I don't know, I answered. Maybe we should. I was cut off and winced as the facility announcement system turned on with a screech. A voice echoed through the room, firm yet with an undertone of barely contained panic. All employees, evacuate immediately. This is not a drill, I repeat, this is not a drill. Proceed to evacuation stations and... The feed went silent, then whined back to life. The speaker was speeding up, his veneer of calm slipping as panic took control. He was practically shouting now. Don't use the computers. Don't use the terminals. Don't. Suddenly, the voice went silent. The lights in the room turned off again. It took several seconds for them to blink back to life. The workers were looking around, confused and scared. Peter looked over at me, worry written in the lines of his face. What's going on, Rob? I don't know, I answered. We should probably get moving, though. Evacuation stations for this level are in the canteen. We moved to exit the room with the other researchers, but had only gone a few steps toward the door when the announcement system whirred to life a third, final time. A robotic voice, bland and featureless, echoed through the room. Containment Protocol 3 Alpha 7, engaging in 30 seconds. There was a second of silence. Then, panic began to spread. Scientists and programmers jostled, trying to reach the door, not knowing what was happening but desperately wanting to escape it. Peter was calmer, but only just. What's happening, Rob? He asked, panic threatening to overwhelm him. What's Protocol 3 Alpha 7? I wasn't sure, but I had a suspicion. Every air duct on this level contained a thick metal pipe, ending in a blocky dispersal unit over each vent. 3 Alpha 7 meant gas. I grabbed Peter by the shoulder. "Run. This way." We tore out of the room and down the corridor. My mind raced as I tried to think of anything I could do to save us. Where could we be safe? The air ducts were everywhere, every room had one. Every room. "Get to the service elevators," I yelled at Peter. "Quick." We sprinted down the corridor towards the elevators. How much time did we have? 20 seconds? 10? Less? It was only blind luck that saved us. When we arrived, we found one of the elevators waiting at our level. We jumped inside, breathing heavily as the twin doors slammed closed. I quickly took off my janitor's overalls and shirt, stuffing them into the small line where the 2 metal plates of the door connected. "What the hell is happening?" panted Peter. "No idea," I answered. "I think the rooms will be flooded with some kind of nerve agent." "What? Why? Why would anyone do that?" I made to answer, but outside the door, I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. The hiss of escaping gas. We waited, barely daring to breathe. Cries and screams came through the door, muffled but unmistakable. They went dead quickly, and silence fell on the facility. We trembled in our sanctuary. Peter began hyperventilating, on the edge of a panic attack. "What the fuck, what the fuck, what the?" I grabbed him by the shoulders, forcing my own fear down. "Listen to me, Peter. I don't know what's happening, but we can't stay here. Those doors and my clothes won't hold a gas out for long." Peter's heaving breath slowed down, and I silently thanked the heavens. I had been on the verge of breaking as well, and we would need to remain calm if we were to survive whatever was going on. "If the containment protocol's activated," Peter began, "that must mean the entrance to the facility is locked down. We can't escape that way." "Damn it," I swore. "How the hell do we get out, then?" "We're on floor 3 right now," said Peter. "I once did some work on floor 6, 3 levels down. There's a control room there, with computer access to pretty much the whole facility. Maybe I can use it to lift the lockdown." I paused for a second, considering our options. I had no idea what containment protocols had been enacted on floor 6, there were no gas pipes in the air ducts there, so it couldn't be gas. "You're right. Let's go." I pressed the button for floor 6, but the elevator remained in place. I cursed. "The lockdown must have disabled them," said Peter. "Looks like we're stuck here." He laughed sarcastically. "All those years programming and hacking, and I can't even get a bloody elevator to work." A flash of inspiration hit me. "We don't have to get it to run," I began tentatively. "We just need to get into the shaft. Then we can use the elevator ropes to climb down to floor 6. Peter looked at me, puzzled. In place of an answer, I reached up, sliding aside a ceiling panel and revealing an entrance hatch. My friend whistled quietly. "Looks like I chose the wrong profession, Rob. Janitors seem to be beating programmers today." With Peter helping me up, I managed to open the hatch, revealing a long shaft illuminated by a fitful red light. Climbing out of the elevator, I pulled my friend up after me. The elevator shaft was wide, having to accommodate 3 separate cabins. Thick steel ropes led down past us, disappearing into the dark below. "Is this a bad time to admit I don't really like heights?" I said. Peter sniggered, though it was a hollow, mirthless sound. "Better than staying here," he answered. Carefully, he climbed over the side of the shaft and grabbed hold of the thick rope dangling next to our lift. I followed, trying not to look down or think of the fathomless fall over which I was now suspended. I hadn't been lying when I told Peter the first didn't like heights. We began descending. Soon, my muscles were burning with the effort of hanging on. Once, I glanced below, and felt my heart speed up. The red-lit shaft stretched down, its end out of sight. I quickly looked up again. After what felt like an eternity, we reached the entrance to floor 6. A narrow ledge, used for maintenance, ran around the circumference of the shaft, and we carefully edged our ways along it, backs to the wall. The doors to floor 6 were shut, and I began worming my fingers in between them, trying to pry them open. Next to me, Peter peered down, and whispered, "Rob? Do you see that too?" Despite my fear, I looked down. There wasn't much light to see by. But as I peered downwards, I could see something moving far below. A chill ran down my back. I couldn't make out details, only rough impressions. A glint of steel. The click-clack of long, spindly legs. a glow of red eyes. The rope next to us suddenly swayed as something grabbed hold of it and began climbing up. "Shit, shit, shit," I whispered through clenched teeth. Desperately, I turned back to the doors. "Hurry, Robb. Hurry," whispered Peter. Panic had crept into his voice. "It's coming." Finally, the door cracked open, and a sliver of light pierced the shaft. There was no time to open it fully. I forced myself through the gap, Peter behind me. With fumbling fingers, I forced the doors back together, just as something long, thin and gray reached up from the shaft below. We collapsed to the floor, exhausted. Through the shut door, we heard something scraping on the door we had only just closed. After a few seconds, it was replaced by a clicking sound, which moved further up the shaft. Slowly, it went silent. "What the hell was that?" I whispered. Peter looked at me with wide eyes. "I don't know, man. Who the hell knows what they're keeping down on the lower levels? It's not just programmers here. Biologists, doctors. There's not a discipline of science which isn't represented here." I contemplated his words in silence for a few seconds. "We need to move, before that thing comes back," I said finally, getting up. "Lead the way, Peter." We set off down the winding corridors of floor 6.